But at the time when I first had this realization, it kind of really blew my mind. But it was the fact that it took me a couple months to realize that my side hustle income had now equaled my monthly expenditure. So I thought, why am I going to this 9 to 5? Why am I spending 5 days a week there when I don't actually need that income? Thank you. Yeah, there is some context around those, which I'll come on to in the PowerPoint. But I was giving a run through to my girlfriend on Friday, and she said if they don't like the presentation, hopefully they'll like the bagpipes. If they don't like the bagpipes, hopefully they'll like the accent. So hopefully I'll get all three, but at least one, and I'll be pretty happy. So yeah, I'm just gonna talk through kind of my journey with FI, and that kind of leads me quite nicely on to kind of the broader story around what I'm working on right now, which, as was alluded to, is Topia. So I think from my standpoint, I had very much textbook journey into FI. In 2019, I was working in the Pointy building, hated my job, very miserable, sat at a desk just like that. And it was a really, really low moment in my life. And as I was putting this PowerPoint together, I genuinely believe that if I hadn't have discovered FI, there was a pretty strong chance I would still be sat in that desk today. So I was feeling very, very grateful that I discovered FI and that I escaped from kind of that situation. But was in the corporate life, luckily discovered FI, so feeling very humbled about that. My route into FI was Mr. Money Moustache, who I call my FI savior. I think for a lot of people it was the same, but still remember to this day very vividly opening up his blog post and the simple maths behind early retirement. And for me, it was just immediate aha moment. Couldn't believe this thing existed. People were doing it. It was legit. And was completely hooked into the concept. Went on the kind of FI binge where I consumed everything I could get my hands onto, podcasts, blogs, you name it. I read it. And then started crunching my numbers. And initially I thought if I implemented kind of frugal living, made some changes, did some optimizations, I could hit roughly kind of 29% savings rate, which I got to, and that would kind of spit out 18 years to FI. And I looked at that number and thought, I'd like that to be a little bit nearer if I could. So I went even deeper into all the optimizations, moved out into a way smaller apartment, got a bike, cycled everywhere, did all the classics, and managed to knock it up to a 47% savings rate and lowered my time to FI to 13 years, which I was pretty happy with. But got to a point where I felt like I'd really kind of dug deep into lowering my expenses as much as possible and really felt that I couldn't really lower them anymore and felt like I'd kind of hit a ceiling and got a bit frustrated with that number to the fact that, I couldn't get it any lower from how I was looking at it. I then came across the kind of side hustle terminology and thought, oh, here we go. Here's another way I can start bringing that number back down. So decided to get my hustle on. And priority was, what is the quickest or what is the easiest and quickest way I can get some sort of additional income stream up and running outside of my 9 to 5 job. And you probably heard it. I've got a pretty unique skill set, which I thought I could deploy. So one weekend put together these two websites. One is teaching online and one is people at the time can book me out for weddings and corporate events and stuff like that. And that was my first kind of taste into side hustle life. And I got pretty hooked on it. And I think it took about 4 weeks, I'd increased my income by about 20%, ran the numbers kind of round 2, again, hacked away a couple of years off that ultimate kind of time to FI. And was pretty happy with it. And it just got my mind racing around what else I could do to try and again, bring that number closer, reduce that time to FI. And what I realized with the first bagpiping side hustle was that I was quite limited in terms of how many hours I could put into it. And for every hour I went to a wedding or taught online, I got, 1 hour's worth of payment. And I only had a certain amount of kind of free hours outside of my work in the week. So I started thinking about, is there a second side hustle I can get up and running, which kind of distorts that equation of kind of 1-to-1, 1 hour worked equals 1 hour of payment. And I started getting really into this idea of more kind of passive income. And thinking of something which I could work on now and put hours into now, and it would keep kind of paying dividends in the future, kind of not exponentially, but it wouldn't be tied to how many hours I was working on. And there are a lot of different things I explored or thought about when it came to the passive income. But the second side hustle I got up and running was an Amazon FBA site, which is when you bulk order stuff from China, send it straight to Amazon, and then Amazon starts shooting it out to or orders all of the kind of fulfillment process when people do order that. So that was my second side hustle, and it was very passive. It took much longer to get up and running, so about 3 months of pretty hard graft, researching the product, finding a manufacturer, getting it all shipped out there. But as soon as it was all up and running, it's very, very automated. And I found I was putting in a couple of hours a week and getting a pretty solid income coming in. So that was the second side hustle I implemented. And then I got to the third time I started crunching my numbers and got to a really good point where the Amazon FBA was bringing in, pretty healthy monthly income combined with the bagpiping I was still doing on the side. I brought that down to 6 years, and I got to a point where I think within 13 months, I went from 18 years to 5 to 6 years and was on this kind of big blitz train of bringing it closer and closer. And when I got here, I thought, okay, that's good. I'm going to chill now. I'm going to get back to kind of living my life and kind of ease off the obsession of bringing down my time to FI, which had engulfed my life for about 13 months. And I was pretty fine with that. And then it got to a couple months later when I was doing my kind of monthly review and just checking out my numbers, making sure everything was doing as it should be. And this slide looks really simple now, but at the time, the next one I'm going to show you, but at the time when I first had this realization, it kind of really blew my mind. But it was the fact that it took me a couple months to realize that my side hustle income had now equaled my monthly expenditure. So I thought, why am I going to this 9 to 5? Why am I spending 5 days a week there when I don't actually need that income? And it was quite confusing at the time because I thought, I'm not at FI. I haven't hit my FI number. I'm 6 years away from it. But at the same time, I've got income which can sustain me today to not be dependent on my job. And it was a really interesting scenario. And I think as soon as I realized this, I realized that I didn't need my job. I was confident my side hustle was kind of sustaining the level they were. And within about 48 hours of looking at this very simple equation, I handed in my notice to my job. It's funny, and we were talking about the kind of slow FI concept. I think there are all these new kind of variations of FI coming out, and I think what happened to me here is a kind of another variation, and I was kind of calling it semi-FI, where I still had to work on my side hustles, but I was working on my own terms. So I was choosing, when I wanted to work on them. I was choosing where in the world I wanted to work on them. And I was also choosing what I wanted to work on as well. And this completely changed my life. And it was a huge inflection point. And just, although I wasn't completely financially independent, I just unlocked a huge amount of freedom in my life to do kind of these different things much more on my terms. So it opened a huge door to me. And, I was doing exactly that. I was kind of going around with my laptop, working on different things in different places in the world and was very happy. But it then got to a point where I started kind of thinking, once you have more spare time, you just think a lot more and you think, what do I actually want to do? And although I really enjoyed my side hustles, they weren't exactly fulfilling. They were just almost a means to an end to kind of give me that freedom. And I started thinking about, what do I want to do with my time? What do I want to do with my life? And having these kind of broader, I call them quarter life crises, or at least for me, thoughts. And I kept coming back to the journey I'd been on since discovering FI and the huge impact it had in my life and, fundamentally had massively changed my life. And I thought, what I want to really do is spend time trying to help other people discover FI, unlock FI, and kind of teach them the process I went through. So I then moved back to the UK where all my friends and family were, and just spent a lot of time just chatting about FI to people, whether it was in the bar at lunch or just constantly barking at people's ear about this thing I'd done, and it was called FIRE and it was legit. And what I found time and time again is people just really kind of struggle to get started on that journey to FI. And I'd constantly check back in with my friends after telling them my whole story and be like, guys, where are you on the journey? Have you done that? Have you done that? And constantly it was just hit with this kind of face of, I just didn't quite understand this, or I wasn't sure about this number, or I didn't really know what to do. And that just sparked this kind of drive within me that, can I produce something? Can I build something? Which just makes it really easy for someone to like get started on this journey we're all on, and this journey which, you know, has so many positive externalities once you do embark on it. And that kick-started this passion project at the time, which was trying to build something which would help people kind of reach FI and help them get started FI. And that's really where kind of Topia was born from. And it was very much, you know, what can we do to help people get started kind of working out what FI is and how to start tracking their progress. And then also how to help people start accelerating their progress forwards. So started cracking away with this. I think now, again, looking back, this is about, I had the kind of initial idea almost 2 years ago now, greatly underestimated the kind of workload involved of building an app and the kind of intensities around it. I kind of thought it would be something I could spin out in kind of 3 to 6 months and then kind of put on autopilot. But the kind of general journey from that kind of point of realizing what I want, what kind of I thought my purpose was in life to where we are now is just brief overview of kind of what it looked like. Had the idea in kind of 2020, didn't want to kind of commit or build something until I was sure people would get value out of it and wanted it. So spent a lot of time speaking to people in the community. This was during COVID, so it was all on Zoom. Generally did 250 Zoom calls during 2020 just to find out, you know, whether it would add value and what people wanted to see in a tool like that. Persuaded one of my friends who was a coder to start coding a really basic beta version of the app towards the end of 2020. And then this is when Grant comes into the picture. So Grant, big idol of mine, read his book. He's really big into side hustles as well. So I'd always followed his journey. Sent him an email, you know, hey Grant, been working on this app. I really think it's going to help people in their FI journey. Didn't hear anything back from him. Emailed him again a couple months later, like, Grant, like, here's an update. We've changed this. We've done this. And then we ended up jumping on a call, kicking it off. He really shares the same mission of, you know, trying to help other people on their FI journey. So Grant joined the team. He also put a bit of money behind the app, which enabled us to kind of fast track how quickly we could build it. So most of 2021 was developing it, iterating it, testing it, and then kind of launched it in 2022 in both the UK and the US. So that's a kind of bird's eye view of what the process looks like. And then in terms of the kind of value we want to add and the benefits, you know, I believe Topia can have in terms of helping people track their journey. I mean, what we really want people to do is, back to that kind of initial moment I had when I speak to my friends and family, is the real kind of idea was that someone could come onto Topia and within, you know, a couple of minutes could input their numbers and get a picture of where they are on their journey, what their timeline looked like, and then start to find kind of resources and bits and pieces to help them on that journey. So that's what we kind of built in terms of this kind of first version of the app. You can track, you can tinker around, you can create scenarios, and again, hopefully people can get kind of up to speed really, really quickly. The next part of Topia's kind of evolution, which we've been working on a lot over the last couple of months, and it's a big focus next year, is this idea of how can we help people accelerate their time to financial freedom or financial independence. And this is where Topia Plus comes in, which is a monthly or will be a monthly subscription. And this is where kind of the elements of my journey and the side hustle emphasis really comes into play. And what we've started doing is reaching out to people in the FI community who have launched successful side hustles, and we're working with them to help them create online courses to help other people learn how to get that in a step-by-step process, you know, what the side hustle is and how to get it up and running. Then people can join group coaching sessions with those side hustle experts to ask any questions. You know, how do I do that with Amazon FBA? How do I do this with whatever side hustle they're thinking of setting up? And this whole output is to try and get people to that point I reached, which really revolutionized my journey, which is, can you generate side hustle income which equals your monthly expenditure? So then you can step back and start kind of working on your terms. So this is the kind of next evolution we're working towards. And like I said, just really trying to get people to that point of this kind of unique variation of FI called where your side hustles do equal your monthly expenditure and you can work on your terms. And then I think it's important to talk about the relationship between that and kind of traditional FI, especially as we're seeing all these different kind of facets evolve out of core FI. And I think especially for me, like once I unlocked the ability to work on my terms, I had more time to focus on my side hustles, to grow the side hustles. And eventually what should happen is your side hustle income will be larger than your monthly expenditure. And then any excess money you can start putting towards your ETF portfolio so that you can eventually reach traditional FI. Because I don't particularly want to, well, I don't think I want to be working on all my side hustles when I'm, I don't know, 60, 70, 80. I'd quite like to be able to fully retire at some point. So I think that's the way we're viewing that sort of evolution between traditional FI and what we're calling Topia FI. So that's kind of my journey and how Topia kind of evolved from it. I think, you know, we've got a lot of exciting things we're working on around this Topia Plus concept next year, but it's just, you know, really want to help people get started and then accelerate their progress to financial independence. So that is my journey and a bit about Topia as well. And yeah, happy to answer any questions on either this or bagpipes.